when we talk about principles of data protection, what do we mean? The first one is transparency. Do not process without the knowledge of the data subject. So if you're going to process information about an individual, it must be clear in your privacy statement. It must be clear on your terms and conditions. It can come up in your customer journey as well. So there's lots of opportunities for us to build this transparency as we develop and roll out systems and products. Purpose limitation. It's been a big one. As we said, marketers, by our very nature, we'd like to collect as much as we can about our customers, so we feel we know them and that we can tailor anything and everything to that. But then under privacy and under data protection, you're asked, okay, if it's a KYC registration, then don't collect more than what you should collect under KYC, because and the principles I always feel tie very closely to lawful basis for processing. You need to ask yourself every time you're touching a piece of PII, do I have the right to process and store this information? Can I stand confidently and say that there is a proper basis for that? So collecting and processing personal data for specific purposes only. Yeah. So if it's to register and serve a customer, then be clear that you will use it for that purpose, or what other purposes you're collecting that information for, so that it's not a shock to your customer later on as to why it is you're processing that particular piece of information. That's tied very clearly to the principle of data minimization. And I know with the Kenya Bankers Association, with our good friends at ABSA, we've been having wonderfully robust conversations as to how to implement this across our ecosystem. And so pleased with the support of our regulators, both the central bank, the FRC, and the ODPC. We're closer to reaching a common ground as to how that will progress. And it all comes primarily from a customer complaint. When we started off doing M-Pesa, we said we were sending money to each other, and then we were sending money to organizations. And then our customers told us, when we use M-Pesa to pay to these organizations, they're sending us messages we never asked for. And we said, hiya, we have to stop and look at this thing again. And we have to re-engineer how it is we've done something that we've always done, to go back to the principles of data minimization that we didn't realize back in 2000, when we were 2007, when we were envisaging this product. So there's huge opportunities and scope for us to relook when we're thinking of our compliance journey. It's not a static position. There are things that we are doing going forward that we need to look at, but there are things that we used to do. Are they still okay? Are we sure that they are still okay? Do we double check on that? And I find those are huge opportunities for us to really clamp down on making sure that we don't share more than we should. The concept of anonymization and aggregation of data is a huge opportunity for us to make sure that we're not violating anybody's individual profile. Making sure that if you are doing something such as a legitimate interest of profiling for fraud, for example, that at the same time, people's identities are not being shared more than they should. And it comes across everybody, private sector, public sector, law enforcement. Yes, we've had lots of conversations about law enforcement and their right of access to data. And it's been very clear that the law upholds that you should only share personal data in certain circumstances under certain safeguards. And so it's back to what the data protection law is saying. Make sure you follow the safeguards. Make sure that there is a pursuit of justice in a legitimate investigation where certain pieces of information are required. And all of us now have these obligations front and center within us, within our gift to exercise, and we really should look at it. When it comes to accuracy, I think that's more of an age-old thing. but still, that a customer has a right to make sure that their data is updated and that we are prompt enough to do it. Yes, and Madam Kasaid said, across the organization, do your customer care people understand the rights of your data subjects now? Because that's a huge area for us in training not only our customer care agents, but our M-Pesa agents, our dealers, anybody who we work with. Do they understand that we have greater obligations that are spelled out, that we must make sure that we respond in a timely manner to the requests from our customers? I must say, though, and maybe this ties to a data subject rights, no right is, complete or absolute. So I've had interesting complaints and interesting questions, like maybe somebody has made a payment to somewhere and they don't want people to know that they have engaged in certain activities. And I've actually had someone come across and ask, can you delete this from my statements? And you have to explain that there is other rights. Yes, there's financial integrity of payment systems that we need to maintain, and that we are held as banks. You will understand this as financial institutions. So there's, in the world of personal data, what I find so interesting is, whilst it is the right of the data subject is enshrined in the Constitution, and it is a basic human right, there are also overarching other rights and other obligations. And we talked about it today. The right to salimiana, at what point does it become a violation of somebody else's privacy? At what point are you taking away from someone else whilst you are purporting to push for some other right? And it's a question that we need to ask ourselves. We are maturing as a society. And I think we're blessed in Kenya with our freedom of speech. For us who grew up in the 80s, we remember whispering in the house and not talking about anything that could be possibly controversial. Many of our children have not grown in such an environment. They've been able to express themselves freely from when they were little. And I think we should jealously guard that right. But we should also, as we are exercising that right, make sure that we are respecting the rights of our fellow Kenyans. Because it's a gift that we should really take care of. The other principle is around storage limitation, which could possibly be tied to the right to be forgotten when we talk about data subject rights, and then making sure that you're only keeping what you should keep for as long as you should keep. So like financial reporting entities, we all have obligations to keep those records for a certain period. If there's matters under litigation, you would need to keep them for an even longer period to be able to substantiate those claims or support those investigations. And these records extend not only to commercial records of transactions or payments, but also employee records. And that's a huge space. I'm sure most of our employees are getting a lot more savvy about their rights, and we need to pay equal attention. I remember being asked at work, are we only looking at customers' rights, or are we looking at employees' rights as well? And I had to emphasize that, yes, it is every individual, whether it's an investor, whether it's a board member, whether it's a shareholder, whether it's a supplier, whether it's an employee, whether it's someone who applied to your organization for a job and maybe even didn't get the job. Yes, you all have some level of personal information for these people, and we must make sure that you check back into your obligations around making sure that you only keep that information and store it in an appropriate manner for as long as is required. And then finally, integrity and confidentiality. So making sure that your information is complete and is kept confidential. So for many of us who work in information security, you need to know access controls, logging and monitoring, never more important than they are today. And while some of these principles seem archaic or things that we have known, it's always a good idea to take a fresh look with a fresh pair of eyes. Are we sure that only those people who need to know do know certain things? Yeah.